Okay, so you've learned a few things about Solomon. So one thing about Solomon too, we're going to just go to this part of this. We'll skip over this part here. The timeline, of course, that I've given you before, and I kind of moved that over for you so you understand. We're talking about now the divided kingdom. Let me get this pointer out here. There you are, pointer. How well you can see the red dotted line right here. But we're talking about this point here. So we had Saul, David, and Solomon. How long did each one of them rule? 40 years each they did it. It says in the scriptures, okay? And then now we get here to this point. Now there's the division that takes place. I've got a slide in this presentation. I didn't print one out for you. I'll give it to you later. I didn't print it out. But it takes this same area here, a little bit more detail to this for you. But how it goes in two different kingdoms, the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. And then you say, wait a second, southern kingdom here, northern kingdom here. I know you're thinking mentally on the map, it should be the other way around. But for the purpose of this drawing of the timeline, you'll see this is why, okay? Because the northern kingdom is the one who goes in captivity first. And then the southern kingdom goes into captivity later on. So that's what we're going to cover this morning. We're going to cover it. And I took this lesson, I broke it down into 3 parts. You said, John, you did it again. Yeah, I know. I take one lesson, I got to split it up again. But after working on this, I thought, I don't want to rush too much sometimes. So I broke this up into 3 parts for us. So here's how it's laid out for you. This morning, of course, we're doing the big survey of the divided kingdom. Points about the divided kingdom, about that. We're going to talk about that. But then we're going to talk about Ahab. Now, there are many kings in the southern kingdom, northern kingdom. We'll talk about that in a moment. But there's many kings, 19 in one and 20 in the other. We're not covering 19 kings and 20 kings. We're not doing all that. But here are 2 kings that stand out for sure. 2 kings that kind of represent something about each one of these kingdoms. I think is important to understand something about them, about their time. So, Lord willing, we'll talk about Ahab this week and Jehoshaphat the next week, of course, is what we deal with. And then I separated this about the prophetic office because we'll talk about prophets as we go through this, okay? So here's the time of separation, as I call it, the opening here. I pulled this together, the time of separation. If you ever get a chance, Leon Wood's book called A Survey of Israel's History. It's about that big or so, but I've had it for many years myself. I think it's still in print, of course, and you can still buy them. He goes in a lot more detail about a lot of things about the Israel's history. But if you ever have a chance, I would suggest you get that book. He says the tribes of Judah and Ephraim had been mutually jealous since the days of Egypt. There's 12 tribes, but these 2 tribes are key, is that they've been mutually jealous of each other in a way, and some things showing up, as Leon Wood points out. And he points out that Judah was the largest. And we see that if you ever see anything about, we talked about when there Exodus and all of that, the numbers in each tribe, Judah was the largest of them all. Had the most people, of course, the most soldiers, the most everything, of course, the biggest of all. And they were also given the prominent positions. I don't know if you remember when they were marching, their marching sequence, Judah was in the lead of that all the time. So moving through the wilderness. Ephraim, and in contrast, was one of the smaller tribes. Also the great leader, Joshua, had been of her number. Ephraim displayed her sense of importance twice during the time of the judges here. Once to Gideon and later to Jephthah, complaining each time that she had not been properly recognized. The Ephraimites said, hey, we weren't recognized. You didn't include us like you should have. Kind of complainers, but they still wanted to be, hey, we might be little, but we're important too. So there's the division that kept going on, showing up here, and I think it's important to see that. So moving on at that, at the founding of the monarchy, the existence of this basic cleavage was recognized by God's choice of Israel, first king from the small Benjamin, which was located between these 2 tribes. Judah to the south, Ephraim to the north, and right in between there was the tribe of Benjamin between them. Of course, who came out of that? Who was the first king out of the Benjamin? Saul was the first king out of there. The split was accented after Saul's death when only Judah crowned David king. Ephraim's, hey, we won't use Ishabeth, if I say his name, Ishabeth. They made him their king for a little while. Okay? It also showed itself again in Absalom's rebellion and David's return to rule when the northern tribes once more went their own way, led by Sheba of Benjamin, only for a short period of time, for a few days that took place. But when David became king, the northern kingdom said, hey, we want Ishbosheth to be our king. How long did David be king? Was he king before he had all of the 7 years before he got the rest of the kingdom, of course. It was all united together for them. Okay? So with that background to this, it goes again. It happens again bigger. So the kingdom here is dividing up. So in Jeroboam, if you happen to be in 1 Kings chapter 11, if you turn to 1 Kings chapter 11, the kingdom was divided in the days of Solomon's son Rehoboam. Okay? So 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 9 through 13. Let's flip this over. And this is the reason why it took place. This is during Solomon's time and why this took place, of course. And the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice. Excuse me. He had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. Notwithstanding, in thy days I will not do it for David thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son. Howbeit I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David, my son's, my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen. Why did God say this was going to happen? What did he say? Why did God say this? Because of Solomon had turned to other gods. Remember all them 700 wives he had? They were not all nice ladies either. And they drew him away to their own gods. He even built buildings for their own gods and all that. But he did wrong, and twice the Lord had told him about that. Knowingly, he still did those things. And the Lord said, because of that, your kingdom is going to be taken away from you, but it's going to be taken away from your son. And he waited until his son took over after Solomon's death to take place. Okay? It doesn't make any difference how smart you are, how rich you are. It doesn't make any difference. But if you disobey the Lord, that's the problem. Disobedience to the Lord is the problem, no matter who you are. No matter stature in your life, how low you are, it doesn't make any difference. It's your obedience to the Lord makes a difference. So if you see here and down in verse 28, we'll move down a little bit. Let's go to verse 14. And the Lord stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad, the Edomite, he was of the king's seed of Edom. And for it came to pass when David was Edom. I need to skip all that. That's Hadad. Let's skip all of that. Let's go down. Let's move down further to verse 28. Let's go to verse 26. And Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite of Zeradah, Solomon's servant. Now, what did the Lord say earlier about who's going to take this part of the kingdom? Did y'all see that earlier? Let's back it up here in verse 11. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, forasmuch as this is done of thee, he said, forasmuch as this is done of thee, thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend thy kingdom from thee and will give it to thy, who? Servant. Back over here to verse 28. And Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite of Zeradah, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zerah, a widow woman, when even he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Milo and repaired the breaches of the city of David, his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. And Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem that the prophet Ahijah, the Shilonite, found him in the way and he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces. For thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon and will give 10 tribes to thee. So he's given 10 tribes. God had said he was going to give it to his servant, and he's going to give him 10 of the tribes. They're given here. So this is where Jeroboam comes into place here. Here's a thing I told you. I expanded this out a little bit for you to see the highlights of these two kingdoms. Rehoboam is who? That's Solomon's son. Jeroboam is the servant who also becomes the leader of the northern kingdom. Rehoboam is the king of the southern kingdom, which is also referred to as Judah in scriptures. One is referred to as Judah, one is referred to Israel. The 10 tribes are referred to as Israel. You'll see that happening. I don't know how well you can read all this. I'll give you a handout, not today, but you'll have a handout of this next week. How many years this lasted from this point here, this year about 975 BC to this point. The southern kingdom lasted till the Babylonian captivity. Jeroboam's kingdom, the northern kingdom, lasted till the Assyrian captivity. I just point out here there's 20 kings, but one family. The southern, David's family was the one who ruled the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom had different dynasties, different families were taking place there. And there's a lot, you'll see this as we get to that, a lot of assassinations took place. That's how they got rid of somebody and who became the next leader, and that kind of stuff went on in the northern kingdom. One dynasty after another took place. The significant part about these two kingdoms is something significant is about their relationship to the Lord. The northern kingdom, which is the 10 tribes, were what? Idol worshipers. The southern kingdom, they still had the tabernacle with them in Jerusalem. And they still, most part, worshiped the Lord. Now, some of the kings weren't all great, but there were some kings who were great. Fantastic king in the southern kingdom, in the kingdom of Judah. Had great kings. Okay? So when Jeroboam came into place as the leader after Solomon's death, in chapter 12, if you turn to chapter 12 if you're not there already. In chapter 12, I'm going to give you a quick look at this here, but the first part of chapter 12, Rehoboam is now the son of Solomon, and he is now the king after his father's death. And so Solomon had imposed taxes on the people. People don't like taxes, do they? Anybody here like taxes? I mean, it does happen, but it's got to be done. But he imposed some strong taxes on those people. Well, when the people, after Solomon's death, they thought, hey, let's go talk to his son and see if he can kind of ease up on those taxes. Well, Rehoboam said, let me go check and let's check some councils. The older men said, hey, you need to kind of ease down on these taxes. The young guy said, no, we like the taxes. Keep it up. It helps us to live better, basically. I'm kind of giving you the quick rundown. So which way did they go? Increase the taxes, because the young people, his friends, hey, we like this kind of living. Let's keep this up. We want to live this way. And with that short part of that, created a division. So down here, when they came to verse, let's go down here into verse 12. And so Jeroboam and chapter 12, verse 12, and Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day as the king had appointed, saying, come to me again the third day. And the king answered the people roughly and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him. The old men had said, hey, you need to lower it down. We can work through this, in a sense. And spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My fathers also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shilahite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse to your tents. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house. David So is Israel departed unto their tents. So they separated. Immediately they just separated. Okay? So you got two kingdoms going to take place here. So looking down here at verse 25. Let's see where I'm at. 28, down here at 28. Whereupon the king took counsel and made two calves of gold. 11:20. Oh, I'm in the wrong chapter. Chapter 12. On chapter 25. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein and went out from thence and built Peniel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. Now what was the problem that Jeroboam was thinking of? We split, but where are the people going to worship? Where's the center of worship at? Jerusalem. So he doesn't want them to go back to Jerusalem. He wants them to stay separated from Jerusalem and not have the tendency to go back there. Okay? So down here in verse, we keep going on down here. And so it says there in verse 28, so whereupon the king took a counsel and made two calves of gold and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Hey, it's too far. It's really too far for you to travel down to Jerusalem. So I'm going to make this easier for you. I'm going to put a calf here down in these two places here. One's in Dan and one's in Bethel. And it says here, he goes down and says, to go up to Jerusalem, behold the gods, O Israel, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other put in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made a house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which are not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar, and so did he in Bethel, sacrificing the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. The short of it is, he created these two calves, one in golden calves, one in Bethel, which is only, I think, 11 miles away from where Jerusalem is. Not too far to go. Hey, no need y'all going down to Jerusalem. Just stay right here. The one in Dan is a little bit further up. Why did he make golden calves? You have any ideas why they make golden calves? For gods? I think it's crazy to make anything and then call it a god, but that's craziness. But why golden calves? Anybody have any ideas why that? Didn't it happen earlier? Remember when they came out of Egypt and Moses went up and Moses and Joshua went up with the Lord? And what did Aaron do down there? The people said, hey, make us, they're gone. Let's make us a god down here. And what did he do? Made a golden calf. The idea was that they believed that the gods stood on the back of calves. That represented the gods to them. Whoever the god might be, Baal is, whoever it might be. That they stood on these calves' backs is what they believed in. I don't know about you, but it's craziness to think I can make something and then we all turn around and bow down to it. But that's what they did. It doesn't make sense, but that's what they did in that idea. But he did not want them to go back down there. Quickly, this is a quick, brief thing about the whole division anyways. The southern kingdom had 8 good kings out of the 20. The chief of these was Asa, Jehoshaphat, Uzziah, Zechariah, Hezekiah, and Josiah. And others started out well, but did not end well. So keep that in mind. They had 20 kings, but out of that was 8 good kings. This is not all 8 of them listed here. But 8 of those kings were good kings, considered good kings, okay? But in the northern kingdom, there were no good kings in the northern kingdom during its entire history that they had. They had 19 kings, and not one of them was a good one at all. And like I told you earlier, the northern kingdom had dynasties. In other words, whoever, say Omri was the, if I say his name right, O-M-R-I, when he became king, then his sons, then of course they get assassination takes place, and another family takes over, and it's just a constantly changing over of dynasties. They dealt with 9 dynasties, 9 different families ruling the northern kingdom. But the problem with them is the key thing is what I said earlier. with the northern kingdom. Idolaters. Idolaters. Okay? So down to Ahab. Let's take Ahab. I'm taking out Ahab today. We'll talk about Jezebel. We'll talk about Jezebel today. Jehoshaphat next week. Okay, but today we're going to talk about Israel. And Israel is which kingdom? Northern kingdom. Okay, when you hear, now you start hearing Israel and you're going to hear Judah. Okay, Judah's going to be the southern kingdom. Israel's going to be the northern kingdom, is how it's referred to. But here's Ahab of Israel, okay? He's the most infamous of the northern kings was Ahab. In that David Cloud's book, if you happen to have David Cloud's book, this is where this note comes from. I thought it was interesting that he says this. 6.5 chapters of Scripture are devoted to this king, to his kingdom and times in chapter 16. We'll talk about here in a second here in chapter 16 in a moment. He married Jezebel, the daughter of Baal, king of the Zidonians, and she led him into Baal worship. And she was the princess of the Phoenician commercial empire. The Phoenician commercial empire was great. I mean, as far as massive in what they did. They were known for making ships and for commerce is what they were known for. But they were also known for Baalism, is what they were known for as well. But during this time, because of Ahab, one of the greatest prophets shows up, and that's Elijah. Will show up, will appear on the scene here. We'll talk about him in a moment as well. So if you happen to be in 1 Kings chapter 16, if you would see. We're jumping over chapter 16 here. Chapter 16, verse 30. Well, let's go ahead and let's go 29. We'll pick on 29. And the 30th and 8th year of Asa, king of Judah, and Judah is who? King of Judah. Judah is what? Southern kingdom. Okay, just keep you all thinking which terms they are. Judah began Ahab, the son of Omri, to reign over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel and Samaria 22 years. And Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord above all that were before him. And it came to pass, as it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Baal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. I know I don't have the timeline, the chart here for you from the time of Jeroboam and the kings that took place, but time of Ahab, of his time. I'll give you that next week, of course. But we're just using Ahab as an illustration here. But with Ahab, it says here about him, a few things about him. What is it about him that stands out?
He was the worst in God's eyes.
Pardon? He was the worst of them all at this point. He was even worse than all the other kings before him of this time, right? And what did he embrace here? Because of his wife. Idolatry with Baalism. Baalism was a horrible thing because they believe in sacrificing their children as well, was involved in it. So a lot of immorality involved into it as well, and all that whole thing. And of course, idols and all that's involved here. But if you see here, it came to pass, we said in verse 31, and it came to pass as he had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Baal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. And he leads, and his wife, Jezebel, notoriously what she did, also leading the country into worshiping Baalism, of course. So move over here. So Ahab did more to provoke the Lord. This is a quote from 1630 we had here. He did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. Later, in 1 Kings records that there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord, whom Jezebel his wife stirred up. Let me ask you this question. Does it make any difference who you associate with? It does. It makes a difference who you're close to. And here his wife is very much influencing his life and leading him astray, of course, and he is willing to go that route. He didn't care because his great-great-great-grandfather, whichever how it works out, Jeroboam, relation to him, not so much it was related to him, but I'm saying he was one of the earlier kings. What he did, he just kept doing other things just as worth than taking on this Baalism. And he had his wife influencing him that. It does make a difference who you associate with. It does make a difference who your companion is, who you become, who you wind up marrying. It does make a difference. It's going to impact your life. And some of you could probably say the same thing. You know it's impacted your life. Good or bad, you know it's impacted your life one way or the other. It will impact your life, just like what happened here with him. So Ahab followed the sinful ways of Jeroboam, but he went beyond the wickedness of Jeroboam, aggressively promoting Baalism. Promoting it. Excuse me. Apart from these things, I want you to understand something about Ahab. Apart from these things, he was also, he was a pretty smart guy about some certain things. He built cities for the people. He did things like that. As he's pointing out here, militarily, he was generally effective in militarily doing things, as you see here. On 2 occasions, he defeated Armenian sources in accordance with predictions of a prophet of Yahweh. He did do some things that seemed helpful as far as administrator, as far as a leader goes for. But as far as part of his leadership, he led the country to what? To do Baalism, into idolatry. So here's the chapters we're going to touch on briefly here just for this a little bit here. But during the reign of Ahab, and I pointed this out earlier to you, of one of Israel's most astounding prophets to come forth is Elijah. He comes on the scene. Now, I don't know if you noticed anything. When we get to this book here about the book of the Kings and the Chronicles about the kings, of course, at all of them, who is starting to show up? Which group of people are starting to show up? Maybe not saying the right words, and I try not to give it away, but certain prophets are showing up. Now, Samuel was a prophet. Now, he was a judge, but he also was a prophet. And there was a few prophets in between their time of the judges, of course. But now with the kings, like Nathan was a prophet for David and all, there was a few of those. But now you're going to see a lot more prophets showing up in this part of the history, that God uses these prophets to take a stand and for different purposes here, for the needs here, of course. But here, I wanted these chapters here, chapter 17, 18, and 19. Quick overview of each one of these a little bit here. But the first one is chapter 17. Elijah appears and confronts Ahab, prophesying there would be no rain for how many years? 3 years. Because you see it in chapter 18 and verse 1 talks about 3 years later, there's no rain. And without rain, what happens? Famine. Things start dying off. Famine starts taking place, of course. In chapter 18, Elijah challenges the prophets of Baal. They lose and are slain, and he also tells of the return of the rain. Interesting, when Elijah, what he does, he finds Obadiah. Obadiah is not the prophet that you see as far as the book that's written by him. He was just a servant to Ahab, served with him, but he was not. But this Obadiah was a good person. But when he saw Elijah, he knew who Elijah was. And Elijah told him, go tell your boss that we need to meet. And get all those prophets together. In chapter 18, if you look in chapter 18, and it came to pass, in verse 1, and it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, go and shew thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. And Elijah went to shew himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. And Ahab called Obadiah, which was the governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, and it was so, when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. Interesting how they just talk about this guy Obadiah, what he did kind of like behind the scenes, trying to save these men, keep them being killed. And Ahab said to Obadiah, go into the land, unto all the fountains of the water, and to the brooks, and peradventure we may find grass to save the horses and mules alive, and we lose not all the beasts. So they divided the land between them to pass through it, and Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went the other way, or went another way by himself. And as Obadiah was in the way, behold, Elijah met him. And Elijah here tells him, go back and tell your boss, basically, we need to meet. And I'm shortening this up here for you a little bit here. So let's go down to verse 17. And it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah, and Ahab said unto him, art thou not he that troubleth Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, and that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam. Now therefore send and gather to me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. And Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together unto Mount Carmel. That's a lot of people come for this big meeting and everything. A lot of people showing up for this big meeting. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, now who's he addressing here? Who's Elijah addressing? Which nation? The northern kingdom. He's addressing them. The northern kingdom who's deep in Baalism. Okay? And Elijah said unto all the people and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. And then said Elijah unto the people, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord. But Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on the wood, and put it on fire, put fire under it. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under it. You see the challenge here he's giving to them. And he's saying, I'm one, and there's 450 of them. Let 450 of them do this, prepare their bullock, put fire, whatever they got to do all their preparation. But I'm going to take care of this one, and I'm going to do it this way. Let's move down here. So in verse 26, and they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered. And they leaped upon the altar which was made. And it came to pass at noon that Baal mocked them and said, cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth. He must be awakened. And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lances till the blood gushed out upon them. And it came to pass when the midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice nor any to answer. The short of it is, they went to all of that all day long. He let them do all they wanted to do, and it didn't do any good, did it? Elijah puts his altar up. He puts water on his altar. And he talks to the Lord, very short prayer, talks to the Lord, and the Lord does what? The Lord brings fire down, burns everything up. The stones, everything is burnt up. Even the water. Everything is gone. And it didn't take Elijah all day to pray and talk to the Lord about any of that. But the Lord came and did that, of course. And with that happening there, if you look down in verse 40, and Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook of Kidron and slew them there. All those 450 prophets were slain, killed. Did this change the people's hearts? Nope. Even after all this, they saw and were witnessing of this and saw it take place. It still didn't. Even today, people see things happening and it still doesn't change them. People choose to do what they want to do. People do what's important to them. You know that? You will do what's important to you. If you find something that's important, that's what you're going to do, whatever it might be. Elijah tells them the rain's going to come, and the rain does come. It comes back again. So then chapter 19, Jezebel, of course, threatens Elijah. Elijah flees. God speaks with Elijah about the 7,000 who are still faithful, kind of encouraging Elijah. Hey, there are people out there who are still taking a stand. And God's blessing him to encourage him in that. So then, along this point, Elijah meets Elisha. And Elisha is going to follow up Elijah after Elijah leaves, of course. I want to get to this chapter here. The vineyard, Naboth's vineyard. And that's like, I really was trying to get to this. I'm rushing to get to this point. I should have moved further. In chapter 21, if you turn there, please. And it came to pass after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard which was in Jezreel, hard by the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. And Ahab spake unto Naboth, saying, Give me thy vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near unto my house, and I will give thee for a better vineyard than it. Or if it seem good to thee, I will give thee the worth of it in money. And Naboth said to Ahab, The Lord forbid it me, that I should give the inheritance of my fathers unto thee. And Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my fathers. And he laid him down upon his bed and turned away his face and would eat no bread. And of course his wife comes in, says, honey, what's wrong with you? Why you're not eating? Why you're not, what's the problem here? And he explains to her the problem. He wants this vineyard. He's whining and crying. He can't get this vineyard. And she said, I'll take care of it. You don't worry about it. I'll get it taken care of. The short of this, what does she do? She writes letters down here in verse 6. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal and sent letters unto the elders and to the nobles that were in the city dwelling with Naboth. And she wrote in the letters saying, Proclaim a fast and set Naboth on high among the people, and set 2 men, sons of Belial, before him to bear witness against him, saying, Thou didst blaspheme God and the king, and then carry him out and stone him, that he may die. And the men of the city, even the elders and the nobles that were the inhabitants of the city, did as Jezebel had sent unto them, and as it was written in the letters which he had sent unto them. And they proclaimed a fast and set Naboth high among the people. And the short of it is, they set him up just like she asked it to be done. And these sons of Belial lied against him. And they took him out and they stoned him. I think what's important and interesting here, a group of people were being led away, thinking on evidence of 2 witnesses they had here. 2 liars, of course. And an innocent guy, his life is taken because of that and through all of this. It doesn't get by. Ahab doesn't, he gets the land. His wife said, hey, Naboth's dead now. You can go get it now. There's nobody to stop you from getting it now. But when he goes there, the Lord sent Elijah there. And Elijah went down there. God sent him down there. In verse 25, and there was none like unto Ahab, which, let's back it up. Yeah, and there was none like unto Ahab, which set himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord, when Jezebel his wife stirred him up, and he did very abominably, and following idols, according to all things, as did the Amorites, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. I meant to back it up here. Verse 20. I'll back it up even further. Verse 17. Let's go to verse 17. I went too far. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of, whose vineyard? Naboth's vineyard. Whither he gone down to possess it. And thou shalt speak unto him, and saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed, and hast taken possession, and thou shalt speak unto him, and saying, Thus saith the Lord, in this place which dogs lick the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick the blood, even thine. And Ahab said to Elijah, Hast thou found me, O mine enemy? And he answered, I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring evil upon thee, and will take away thy posterity, and will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. He prophesied what was going to happen to Ahab, that he was going to die. And the dogs were going to lick his blood up here, of course. And it does take place. This is the conclusion I was trying to get to in chapter 22. In chapter 22, Ahab makes a league with Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat is a good king of the north, a good king of the south. He makes a league with him, and he says, hey, let's go after the king of Syria. Jehoshaphat says, okay, we're friends. We're working together at this. Work together. But Ahab tried to do what? He tried to disguise himself, use the right word, thank you, disguise himself as a regular soldier. And what did the Lord do? The Lord had that one arrow. That one arrow, that's all it takes. One arrow it takes and strike him and to kill him and to do exactly what was supposed to be done. And down here in verse, what is it, chapter 22, skip over. In verse, I know the first bell, I'm trying to rush on this. And the battle increased in verse 35. And the battle increased that day, and the king was stayed up in his chariot against the Syrians and died at evening. And the blood ran out of the wound into the midst of the chariot. And there went a proclamation throughout the host about the going down of the sun, saying, even every man to his city and every man to his own country. So the king died and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria. And one washed the chariot in the pool of Samaria, and the dogs licked up his blood, and they washed his armor according unto the word of the Lord, which he spake. The question is, what can you learn anything from Ahab's life? You think, well, I'm not Ahab. I'm not a king. I'm not any of those things. But what can you learn anything from Ahab's life? Anything that stand out to you? A guy who had a lot. Pardon? Pardon? He disobeyed God for sure. We should obey God, yes. We should be, right. Anything else? And I know we cover a lot of territory in trying to cover somebody's life like this. I understand that. But hopefully there's something you can learn from this about no matter what the status of anybody is, no matter who they are. But this guy who was led astray, or he willingly, by his wife, let her lead her away like she did into Baalism, and impacted his life. But even him trying to deceive, trying to disguise himself, trying to think he can circumvent God from doing these things, you know? How many times we tried to, well, you know, I'll try to do it this way, and God won't bother. God set that one arrow. That's all it took is one arrow to accomplish what he wanted done, to take the life of Ahab. God will still fulfill his word, no matter what. He will fulfill his word, no matter how much we try to connive and think we can get around it. Anything else? Any comments, any questions?